Hello and welcome to Talk Motivation with your host Elvis Eckardt, former pro athlete turned business owner, motivating you to achieve personal growth, form new habits, and find happiness in your career and life. Without further ado, let's jump right into today's episode.
Hello everybody, Elvis Eckardt here, your host of Talk Motivation. So glad you joined us on this week's show. I started the podcast when we first went into isolation here in the UK in April and really enjoy bringing episodes to you which give you, well, hopefully some food for thought. Make sure to visit our website www.elvis-eckert.com/podcast where you can subscribe to the show on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts and other sources, so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, I'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that would be appreciated too. So, what can you expect from episode 11? I've had over the past couple of weeks many conversations with friends, peers, business contacts, and went a bit deeper into a topic which I am quite passionate about. The topic is a root cause for a lot of pain and suffering. It's attachment and aversion. If you like music, listen to Everything is Borrowed by one of my favorite artists, Mike Skinner. Most of you probably know him under his music project, The Streets. The chorus of the song goes like this: I came to this world with nothing, and I leave with nothing but love. Everything else is just borrowed. Well, I'm very impressed with myself for actually being able to incorporate lyrics of one of my favorite songs into my podcast. Let's jump straight into today's episode. I want what I don't have. I don't want what I have. Attachment and aversion. Many spiritual traditions like Buddhism tell us pain and suffering, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual and psychological, arise from attachment and aversions. An attachment is an intense desire, a craving, thirst, need, clinging, and the like to be something I'm not, do something I can't do, or have something I don't have. Related to, for example, health, appearance, finances, personal environment, career, relationships, personality, or neediness around elements such as attention, recognition, security, love, control, ideas, beliefs, and the likes of it. An aversion is an intense preoccupation with some aspect or quality about myself that I possess or another possesses that I'm resisting and resenting. Related to, for example, health, appearance, finances, personal environment, career, relationship, personality, or neediness around elements such as attention, recognition, security, love, control, ideas, beliefs, and the likes. Either way, our attention, focus, and emotional and physical energy are working overtime to attract or resist. It's this constant focus on the object of the attachment or aversion that is the root cause of our pain and suffering. So, what or how does attachment look and feel like? Well, attachment is a bit like an addiction or a hook which triggers a reaction in us. I must be, I must do, or I must have. And if I can't be, do, or have, then I experience some degree of pain or suffering. The downside of attachment is that naturally your relationship to these attachments becomes tenuous, producing stress, anger, resistance, resentment, anxiety, and fear. Attachment and aversions cannot not be like that. It is inherent in the nature of attachment, like reaching for something beyond your grasp. Take a moment and look at your attachments or aversions and reflect on how much discomfort you experience in reacting to them. You want your attachments to create a certain positive sense of reality for you. And what you often find is just the opposite reality. Not feeling loved, supported, smart, beautiful, healthy, wealthy, and so on. You get the gist. When your inner happiness and peace depend on your external attachments and aversions, you'll never experience an authentic inner state of peace. It's not possible. More often, you'll experience some flavor of consistent frustration, really. But you think by increasing the intensity with which you pursue the object of your attachments, you'll experience a greater degree of happiness or inner peace. How does that approach of life been working for you up to now? Honestly, the antidote of attachment is detachment, not unattachment. He who would be serene and pure needs but one thing, detachment. That's a quote by Meister Eckardt, a German theologian, philosopher and mystic. Freedom from pain and suffering comes through our release from attachments and aversions. Detachment means taking conscious control over our attachments so they stop controlling us, if that makes any sense. Viewing life from a place of detachment does not mean we are unattached. What detachment means is that we are living inside our self-contained, within ourselves, so we are not to be driven by external powers. When we were detached, it's impossible for us to get hooked by another's or our own wants, needs, emotions, or feelings. We're not upset or manipulated by others or by our own ego-created obsessions, desires and cravings. Detached, we can feel caring, empathetic and compassionate towards others and ourselves without becoming foggy or confused about how we think, feel or act. We don't get caught up in others or our own stories or drama, nor do we need others to be a certain way. Curiously, what drives much of our unhappiness and even insanity is our addiction to our attachments, which mistakenly we feel will bring us happiness and peace. Let me tell you, nothing is further from the truth. The truth is that surviving handily in this world with our happiness and sanity intact demands detachment, letting go from those people, places, things and ideas that drain or manipulate our energies. How can we practice detachment? It's actually quite simple, but it's not always easy. It is becoming a witness, watcher and observer of ourselves. What do I mean with that? Moving as effortlessly as you can and navigating through life, at work, at home, at play and in a relationship without an ego-based agenda. We see what we see. We notice what we notice. And we interact with those with whom we interact, but with curiosity, without efforting or resisting, without attachment or aversion. We observe, witness and watch without becoming emotionally involved, without judgment. Watching yourself, for example, becoming emotional around money or appearance or possessions, or becoming fearful around another person, or anxious in an uncomfortable or unpleasant circumstance, and being rather than emotionally reactive is the practice of detachment. The reason watching and observing are so powerful is because when you observe yourself obsessing about the object of your attachment or aversion, your level of consciousness is heightened to the degree that you will begin to stop doing what doesn't serve you. You can't observe and react simultaneously. It's physically impossible. It is. Detachment is not a passive state.
You are listening to Talk Motivation, the podcast where you get your weekly dose of motivation. Now back to your host, Elvis Eckardt.
Detachment is not a dissociative state where you are less conscious or even unconscious, in denial or passive. When detached, you're consciously aware and engaged in your experience, but you are not attached to outcomes or obsessed with needing to be in control. Detachment is not about caving. Detachment means you take right action, as it's called in Buddhist terms. Don't get me wrong, you can be detached and be a can-do person at the same time. But again, you're not attached to an outcome. You do what your heart feels is right. You move and you act. You just don't allow your ego to get caught up in any preconceived outcomes. Detachment is not about giving up what we want. It's about not obsessing over the object towards which we direct our desires to. When we detach from the object, person, place, thing, idea, we contain our energy, our power and our life force, instead of giving it away. Detachment means we accept the fact that life can be challenging. When we let go of cravings, desires, and attachments, we face life, well, in fact, even death, with equanimity, with nobility, with integrity, dignity, respect, and openness to life's lessons that our challenges are presenting. The tighter you squeeze, the less you have. That's an old Zen saying. Letting go of attachments and aversions supports our soul to experience a clear mental state where we really understand from a higher, deeper perspective how to control our energies with a sense of real self-love and empowerment. So our ego personality is not obsessed with our or others needing to do, to be, or have in a self-destructive way. One of the ego's main beliefs is that we are separate from everyone else. The ego lives from a zero-sum survival of the fittest perspective. So to survive, our ego is driven to nurture more and more attachments and aversions to people, places, things, possessions, ideas, beliefs, relationships, and the likes. Fearing loss, even loss of a premise, a belief, an idea, or life itself, is a threat to the survival of our ego. From the ego's perspective, competition and self-interest are absolutely necessary to maintain survival. And attachments feed our obsession with surviving. In this place, contentment, cooperation, collaboration, and compassion, first with ourselves and then with others, we have to replace fear, which is the driver of attachment and aversion. When we let go of our attachments, we enter a state of soul-filled equanimity, a state of harmony, balance, and connection with our higher self, where we know that everything is unfolding according to a universal or divine plan. Let me give you some homework. Here are some questions for self-reflection. What are you attached to that causes you suffering in some way? What don't you have that you crave, or what do you have that you resist? When you sense a deep desire, craving, or attachment, do you ever consider what you may be trying to escape from? Have you ever watched or observed yourself from outside yourself? What was that like? What did you see or discover about yourself? Whom or what are you holding on to? What do you feel you are lacking that you need to get from someone or something? Attachment equals selfishness. What does that mean to you? Can you remember your earliest attachments or aversions when you were growing up? How did those attachments or aversions affect your experience of love, support, or comfort? Now, please ask yourself these questions and most of all, answer them honestly. Don't sugarcoat the answers for yourself, even if you don't like some of them. They might help you create a new understanding of yourself. Please remember, the greater the number of attachments and aversions we have, and the more emotionally invested we are in them, the deeper we sink into the dream of self. It works the other way around too. The stronger our sense of self is, the quicker and more passionately we fall into attachment and aversion. You can always tell how deeply a person has succumbed to the dream of self by how strong their opinions are. And though attachment and aversion help us orient ourselves outwardly, they slow us down on the path to inner growth. Attachment and aversions are blockages of psychic energy. Just like clogged blood vessels constrict us physically, so clogged psyche constricts us spiritually. If you want to wake up, cleanse your psychic system, so to speak, and let go. I've recently read an anonymous quote which said, "Nothing ever belonged to you. Even you will be returned. Don't get attached." And on this note, I want to finish this week's episode. Thanks for listening to Talk Motivation. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please share the love and let your network know about it. Don't want to miss any episode in the future? Go to iTunes, search for Talk Motivation, and hit that subscribe button. Feel free to also connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can take the conversation there.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Talk Motivation with your host, Elvis Eckardt. To listen to this episode again and to find previous episodes, search Talk Motivation on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. Sayonara, muchachos!